Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simon's like Diamond's back again. Salt Strong podcast talking about best redfish lures for 2022. It sounds so weird saying 2022, doesn't it, guys?
Time is flying.
Dang. And some things have changed. Some things are staples. We'll talk about what lures in general are our best and our favorites, the ones that we're going to be using this year. And we're really going to dive down into the times of year, because there's certain types of lures you're going to use at certain times of year for redfish. Talk about where to use them, like different types of structure and depth. Some rigging tips as well, and even some retrieval tips. So it won't just be, hey, here's our 5 favorite lures or however many we go through. We're going to talk about the whole gambit, and hopefully this will be a super helpful one. And hopefully we'll give you guys some ideas on what lures you need to have in your tackle box for 2022. I will say there'll probably be some lures we don't mention on here that I'm sure work. We have one member, Andy, in our group. He's been using things like asparagus. He's become such a good angler, and he lives in the water. And he got bored one time and started using vegetables and literally rigging them up, and caught some pretty nice trout and even redfish using vegetables. So there's a lot of things that can work. We are going to try to focus on the things that work best and are the most consistent, from Texas to Virginia, even above there, in areas that have redfish in particular. So who wants to kick this bad boy off with a staple or a favorite? Luke,
I just want to say one correction to the above. It was broccoli. So it wasn't asparagus, it was broccoli. It was leftover roasted broccoli after a Christmas dinner, and he rigged it on a jig head and caught 2 redfish with it 2 different times. So it worked one day, and then he did it again and caught more. It blows my mind.
There is an asparagus post as well, so you need to get back in the community. It is an asparagus rig, and it looks good. It looks like a Ned, like a little small piece of it. It's hilarious.
So to normal lures, I'll just kick it off with at least my personal favorite. This is what I've been using most recently, and what I'll definitely continue doing throughout the year, and especially in shallow water, which is where I do a lot of my redfish, and that is the elusive Slam Shady 2.0 on a weighted hook.
Slam Shady strikes again.
Yeah, this is just easy to use. First of all, you can cover a ton of water without having to do like some crazy retrieves. I usually just do a reel and then let it pause, like now in the winter. Reel, pause, and then on the drop is when they hit it, and then reel again, pause. And you can twitch it, you can do all sorts of things, but this right here, and then when they look at it with sight fishing, I let it sit on the bottom. I just do a couple small little twitches, barely moving it, and they'll come and smack it. So this is my personal favorite for now, and really throughout the entire year. This puppy for the shallows is my go-to.
And this Slam Shady lure, I'm going to say, combined with that 2.0 and the Z-Man version, that is the #1 selling paddletail lure, I believe, in the country. And it's not just because it's marketed well. Sure, we market it, but it's because it catches fish, right? People keep coming back. I mean, kids can use that thing. Like Luke said, there are different ways that you can retrieve it, and we could talk about that. But just going out there and straight retrieving it nice and slow catches fish all day long. I know Z-Man told us it was their #1 selling color across the entire world. I mean, they're everywhere. And obviously, we've sold now, and given away, it's well over 1 million. I mean, it's a ton of lures. These things flat out catch fish. So if you don't have Slam Shady 2.0, get some. I believe, at least while we're recording this, we still have some 100 packs left. That's probably the best way to get it. You save a whole lot of money. That's what Luke and I have, personally. I don't know about you guys, Wyatt and Richard, but that's what I keep in my tackle bag. I just keep a big old fat 100 pack.
I just got a new one in recently.
Oh, whammy.
That's a lot of lures right there.
Ooh, and the scent on there too. It just smells. Oh, it smells so good.
Yeah, I keep a 100 bag in my boat as well. But I think we can all agree that the paddletail, it just like, there's several different sizes, but a paddletail is probably one of the best lures, if not the best, for redfish, and in the widest variety of conditions. Now, something I do want to kind of get a conversation started on is, what size you're going to use throughout different times of the year. I guess, considering we're in winter right now, we can definitely start with that. But there's really a whole lot of small shrimp and small bait fish that are around in the wintertime. And I would say that that is your time frame to use 3 to 3.5, which is what our 2.0s, that model that Luke just showed, are. That's that size range. Now, when we start getting into summer, that's when that bait fish starts to get a little bit bigger. That's when I like to use the 4-inch, and that's that Z-Man profile. And then getting into the fall, bait fish are at their largest size of the year. That's when there's big mullet migrations. There's a lot of shad around. That is typically when you're going to have those 5-inch paddle tails like the Bomber working best. And then spring, I don't know if I think I skipped over spring. There's the shad hatch, which is again, those small bait fish. So just kind of moving sizes throughout the years. It's early in the year, start small, get big. And then as you hit winter, you're going to downsize again. But I really find that matching to what the bait around you is best. Now something else is the colors of the paddle tails. We've got a couple different colors. This is the Flamingo Joe, which has actually been probably the one I've caught the most redfish on in the last month. Now, the question of it is whether the color just works well in the clarity of water that I'm fishing, or if it looks a little bit more like the shrimp that I was just talking about. Not sure, but I've been twitching this in front of a lot of redfish and I've been picking up a lot of them. Do you guys have any color preferences throughout the year, or, you know, in terms of Gold Digger, Flamingo Joe, Fred, Slam Shady, like when do you prefer to use each?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I love using just the standard Slam Shady that Luke just showed, same colors that, you know, our Bomber right now. I mean, that is just a staple, and you can literally fish that color the entire year. I mean, it always works, but specifically a little bit more this time of year, kind of where I'm at over here in the Southeast, a big diet change happens a little bit, you know, and mud minnows start to be a little bit higher on the list around this time of year. And that's why I love using the Gold Digger at this time of year. Because if you put this down next to an oyster bar, or, you know, anything in the type of, you know, kind of more muddy water, this looks exactly like a mud minnow. And a slow presentation with that is killer, but you got some gold in it too, you know, and we'll talk about some other lures that also have gold in them, but love this. It shows up, but it's also very natural for this time of year. And it looks exactly like the bait that they're feeding on. So I love this right now.
And now we've got that Gold Digger Bomber. I don't know that it's for sale yet individually, but it's definitely in that of 11 lures for one penny. If you haven't taken advantage of that yet, it's 11lures.com. That is one of the new colors / molds that we have available, is the Gold Digger Bomber. And that will be great, as you said, Wyatt, later summer in the fall. And it seems like a lot of the, you know, because we have members from Texas to really all over, but Virginia, that's really the main market. That's where 80% of our members reside. And it seems like a lot of the murkier areas seem to kind of be attracted to these darker colors like Gold Digger. We saw a ton of it up there and over there, like, you know, Wyatt's in Texas. And but it's interesting. You like the Flamingo Joe. You use the Fred too?
So the biggest thing is there's a water clarity disparity between like pretty much from like Corpus Christi, Port O'Connor down to Port Isabel, which is like the water looks like Tampa clear, St. Pete clear, for all of our Florida members. But once you start going north of like Port O'Connor and you start getting into Galveston and all those areas, it's a different bottom content. There's a lot more oysters, a lot more mud. And I see a lot of darker colors working better up there, and the white, obviously, but darker colors tend to be the preference in those areas. You get further down into my zone, white obviously still works, but when we get the really gin clear water, I almost feel like the white sometimes could be a little too bright if it is like a bluebird day. And, you know, we've talked about this on, you know, sight fishing podcasts, that can be a tough time to get fish to bite. And I think that the pink of Fred or the pink of Flamingo Joe is a little bit of a duller flash, but there's still the flash there, and there's still the presence in the water. If it's like, it literally looks like gin clear water, that is a lure that I've been throwing a lot more, is the pink Paddletail. Again, it could be just, I've rotated through a lot of different colors. It could be they're in on shrimp right now, which they definitely are. I actually threw one of these in front of a redfish the other day that I saw blew up on shrimp. Literally the moment it passed in front of its face, it was just all over it. So I don't know if it's because they're on shrimp or the color is a little bit more subtle, but noticeable in the water on those really, really clear sight fishing days. But I rotate between all the different colors. And if we do have a super windy day, I will use the gold digger because it does stir up a lot of sediment in the water. And that darker lure is a little bit easier seen because it's got more of a shadow to it as those fish are kind of moving around and hunting, and they don't have the clarity that they're used to. So I rotate through all of them for sure.
Let's talk about rigging real quick before we move on to the next lure. So just rigging paddle tails in general. I feel like I only have two things. I have a 1/4 ounce jig head and a twist lock hook. That's me personally. I feel like that's what I kind of go back and forth with. What about you guys?
I use a lot. I mean, this is actually a new hook that we're in the process of designing. It's called the Haas hook, and it's basically a twist lock, but it has a wider gap in between, the longer distance in between the bottom of the lure and the hook itself. Just helps for a better hookup ratio. But it's the same premise where you screw it on the front, then slide it through. And if you want to make it super weedless, you can just dig in the hook point right into the top, and now you can skip it under mangroves. You can take it over oysters. Just for the shallow water, this. And then
what size weight is that, by the way, on that Haas hook?
Sorry?
What size weight?
That's a 1/8 ounce weight. So I like the 1/8 ounce for the paddle tails. It just helps. It'll still go super shallow. It helps for the casting distance, and to me, it's just the favorite weight for like 2 feet of water, 2.5 to 1 foot of water, basically. And then for deeper water, I the same soft plastic. I just rig it on a jig head. There's a lot of jig heads, like the trout eye that you mentioned, Joe, is great. If you're not fishing really tight to structure, for fishing tight to structure, the Texas eye is a smart play. I don't have one here next to me, but it's basically like a worm hooked rigged on a wobbling jig head, and it basically is a weedless jig head, or even the traditional weedless jig heads that have the little spring that protects the hook point. Those are all excellent for fishing deeper water.
I find myself rotating between the owner twist locks and the Texas eyes. I probably can't tell you the last time I put on a jig head, maybe when I fished in North Carolina. Reason for that is a lot of seagrass where I'm fishing, or I'm fishing around a lot of oysters. And I also really like the kind of articulation and drop that those Texas eye jigs allow. So when I'm fishing a little bit deeper water, or the fish are keying in on an actual drop pattern, I've talked about this recently. Twitch pause has been my go-to retrieve for redfish, trout, flounder. I've been catching slams, pretty much just throwing paddle tails with the twitch pause, because that colder water slows those fish's metabolism down. They don't got the energy. So that twitch pause just gives them a little bit more time to jump on the lure rather than something that's zipping by with a constant retrieve. But I really do like the owner twist locks when the fish are keyed in on constants, and maybe I'll mix in a pause there every once in a while. But the twitch pause, where I'm actually jigging the lure, that jig head works a lot better than the weighted twist lock, because the weight sits in the middle of the keel, like Luke was just showing. With the weight being at the front with the Texas eye, it pulls that lure down and in the right direction a little bit faster. Yeah, Luke's got it there. If you guys are watching the video, that head articulates. So when I stop fishing that lure, that head drops straight down, and then the lure goes down with it, still freely moves. And if you're using the Z-Man, the 4-inch that I like to use, that lure will actually sit on the bottom with its tail up. It won't lay down on the bottom like it will with a jig head, because that head is not connected to the hook in a fixed position. It rotates around. So I just really go between those two: the Texas eye from iStrike and Z-Man, or the owner twist locks. Those are my go-to riggings.
Cool. Richard?
Yeah, and for me, I use a little bit of both, but if I'm going to be fishing, especially this time of year, like mud flats and stuff like that, I'm going to go with the twist lock. For one, it's going to be, there's a ton of structure around. You can throw it into the grass, even if you're a bad caster like I am, you can throw it in the grass a little bit and pull it out, and it's just a super light, natural presentation. And like what Wyatt was saying earlier, you can manipulate this weight a little bit as well to even make it a slower drop and do some different things with it. So that's a really good one. But then also kind of over here, in areas where I'm at, we may have to transition to a quick 6 foot plus depth change, and that's when I'm going to use that jig head. And I'll do that in some of the deeper holes. You'll pick up trout and all as well, and flounder. Just caught a slam near docks here recently, and that was all on the jig head. So it's good. I'll have the same exact lure. I've just got different weights on it, in a couple different colors, like what we have, and that's all you really need. It really is. So
cool. And on the Haas hooks, you guys are really the first to hear about this. It's something we've been working on for a while. The owner twist locks are by far our favorite. There's been one problem, the supply demand issues. A lot of people like them. We've helped, make these a whole lot more popular since it's what we're all personally using. We're not sponsored by them at all. They're impossible to find. I saw just a one pack. So it's 3 hooks on Amazon.com. The same ones that we recommend was over $12. And that's, it's supply and demand. They just keep jacking up the prices because they can't get enough. And owner has told us and most of the distributors and tackle stores that it's going to be a while before they get a big supply. And the one thing they did have were those little the twist lock, the springs up at the top that twist into your lure, which is really the secret sauce of the entire owner twist lock hook. And so we did a deal with owner. And we're going to have those. So it will be the actual owner little pin up at the top, and it'll be our hook, our little weight, and it'll be called the Haas. I don't know if we're going to use owner's name on there or not, but we it is a partnership with them. So it's the best of both worlds. And yeah, there it is. So we're actually using their pins because it is a patented pin. They're the only ones that have that literally just drives right. It's like a surgical tool. It goes right into any solid plastic better than anything else out there. There's Luke.
Yep. Yeah. And so far in testing, it's been awesome. It has the same ease of rigging, if not a little bit easier, actually, because the fact that this hook is designed the way it is, the lure sits better right at the top. It doesn't slide down like we've all experienced a lot with pretty much all other hooks. And then, as I mentioned before, the extra gap just helps for the hookup ratio. Even with like the 5-pound line where I can't really let them have it, I can't do a Bill Dance hook set. This has actually had extremely good hookup ratio.
Yep. So be on the lookout, especially you insider members. We'll be giving you guys access first. So if you're not an insider, one more reason, join the Insider Club, and we'll probably do 20 or even 30% off like we normally do when we come out with a new product for you guys. So we're still doing some final testing and manufacturing on it, but that'll be out here before you know it. The Haas hooks. What do we call it? The Helix, right? The Helix is kind of like a spin, a corkscrew.
Helix hook for the shallow runner. Right? We'll have multiple other hooks too, and already working on some, but the first one is going to be the Helix hook.
It's gonna be awesome. Cool. All right. So Paddletail is number one by far. I think we all agree, just year round, it works. It's anyone can use them, but even experienced people. I mean, we had, Sia Richardson do one of our courses with us a long time ago, and he said the same thing, man. If I can only pick one, I'm going to pick a little Paddletail, a little swim bait, because I can cover ground and it's just the most consistent way to catch fish. There's a lot of their stuff out there, but a Paddletail, especially in that Slam Shady color, that's the one it's a staple. We all agree. There are times when you want to mix it up, and there are times where you even want to rip the tail off, which is why we call it the 2.0. That's the one that you can take the tail off real easy, and it turns into a little jerk shad. So speaking of that, let's go into that one. I have a feeling that some kind of jerk shad will probably be high up on the list, like an Alabama Leprechaun. I know we have a couple new jerk shads in that 11lures.com offer. We have a Slam Shady jerk shad and Fred jerk shad. What do you guys like for jerk shad? Size, colors, how you rigging it?
Well, my favorite's the Leprechaun, the Alabama Leprechaun. This was our original one. And this thing, I thought it had too much flash in it when we got it. I was like, I don't know. They went pretty high up on the gold flash spectrum. It's basically a green base with a ton of flash in there. And my first trip out there, I caught a really nice trout, sight fishing in super clear water. So these fish were picky. And then the next day I went to this redfish spot where the guides have been going, and the word in the area all around St. Pete is that you can only catch these big bull reds on cut bait or live bait. And I went in there with this guy, caught 2 of them, 2 over 30 inches, even, and it was super calm out and the water was clear. Those fish just came up and smacked us. So now this is, and it's continued to perform. So this is my all-time favorite on the jerk shad spectrum. But obviously there's a lot of great ones, and I like it for the shallow water. I like it on the owner twist lock with the 1/16 ounce weight. Awesome lure, and proves to be great for triple tail too. This is one of my favorite for triple tail.
Yeah, that triple tail video you posted a little while ago, that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, you can fish because it's weedless and you can fish around like right up against the buoys. Those bigger triple tail, they're not going to chase down a lot of lures, but if you get one right in their face, they really can't help but to eat it. And so that way you can get right in their face without getting snagged on the rope. It's a big bit. It was a game changer for my triple tail under buoys fishing.
Good. Wyatt, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, I love jerk shads, especially for the same scenario that Luke talked about, which is super clear water and super calm water. Most times that paddle tail, when you fish it, bluebird skies, really calm days. If this Fred isn't working, I will pull out that Alabama Leprechaun, or I'll pull out, we did the Z-Man jerk shad as well. That was in the Slam Shady color. Again, I'll rotate between a couple different colors to find out what the fish are kind of zeroed in on that day. But just there's no vibration to it. It's just a visual presentation, which in that clear water, most of those fish are hunting by sight, and they're more aware of what's going on around them because the water's not filled with sediment. It's, they can see everything that's happening. And a lot of times I'm blind casting because I don't even want to get anywhere near those fish. By the time I can see them, I can sight cast them. I'm too close to them already. They're aware something's going on. So just knowing that, again, twitch, pause, letting that lure sink down on that 16th ounce twist lock. I don't like to use anything heavier because a lot of times I'm fishing real shallow and I need that lure to suspend as long as it can before it touches the bottom. Redfish, trout. I've had a flounder take those jerk shads and just absolutely inhale them as well. They're really, really great lures for when you're fishing super calm, super clear days, and you can't get anything else to work. Once you've thrown the kitchen sink, normally that's when the jerk shad is time to come out of the bag.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I really like, probably my favorite for anything in 2.5, 3 feet or less is going to be that Alabama Leprechaun rig weedless, just like what Luke, showed. I mean, that I have caught so many overslot redfish with that lure. It's crazy. I mean, if it's in front of that fish, they're going to eat it. It's just happened so many times. It's one of my favorites, and trout love it too. And when you're in that presentation, I mean, I can throw it on top of oysters almost and just kind of bump it out, and it is absolutely killer. But my other favorite one is going to be the Slam Shady color Z-Man. So you'll see that.
Yep.
Jerk sads. But I love using these in those deeper holes. I will put even a 1/4 ounce jig head, and just the way that this material is designed, it just kind of stays up like this in this position, and it kind of just bumps across the bottom. And even when it's really, really cold, like this time of year, I'll throw on a 1/4 ounce and I will just barely bump that on the bottom. And you got this little jerk shad kind of dancing across the bottom, just being a super easy meal, and everything eats it this time of year. Flounder, trout, redfish. I mean, everything really eats it. So those are my two favorite, depending on the depth.
I'll add one more thing with the jerk shads because it's important, and it's the size. So the actual size of the lure. So one, we mentioned, we kind of touched on it before. This is the nub rig. This is basically Slam Shady 2.0 without the tail, and it has a nice front so that when you do use it without the tail, it turns into a really good jerk shad. But most importantly, it's a very good small jerk shad. So now this is under 3 inches. In the springtime, especially when that bait's really small, like what Wyatt was talking about, when the bait hatchery is starting up, everything's small, all the predators are really honed in on a small silhouette. The bigger lures aren't quite as effective. And the great thing with soft plastics is you can start with the bigger lure and then just rip off the tail and catch the big fish. Even with the 5-inch jerk shad, some of my biggest fish are caught after I rip off the tail. As long as it's rigged right, it's going to have good darting motion. It'll look like both the scared shrimp, kind of bumping off the bottom or out of the grass, or it'll look like a injured bait fish that's kind of fluttering around. So if the fish are dialed into shrimp or if they're dialed into bait fish, this one lure can get them both. That's in my opinion, that's why it's the ultimate. This is what I go to. As long as the puffer fish aren't bad, this is pretty much what I'm throwing anytime I'm in the shallow water is these soft plastics.
That's good. All right, let's move on to another staple. And there's a couple different variations that we'll talk about, and that is shrimp profiles. What do you guys like? We got the power prawn. It's now, I believe, one of our all-time top sellers. And we only have one color, which is super simple. The profile certainly works. I guess you got the big and the small. You got the junior and the real big boy. You got a weedless there, Rich. I love that. I know Wyatt use a couple other different shrimp. We've done some side-by-side comparisons for some of our members. What do you guys like in the artificial shrimp realm?
Yeah, I mean, I can start off. So my top three for sure are going to be number one, Power Prawn. That's worked great for me since I came here to Texas. I wish I'd have had it in North Carolina. When I would get into those winter holes, you got 100 redfish in a hole, and the only thing I can really get them to eat is a shrimp presentation on a heavy jig head, because they're sitting, 6-7 feet down, not moving. You need to be bouncing something that looks like a shrimp in front of them to get them to eat. When I lived in North Carolina, I did test between the DOA and the voodoo shrimp, and the voodoo shrimp absolutely crushed it. It's got a rattle in it, really great shrimp to use. I would throw some Procure on it. It's got that segmented tail like our Power Prawn does. So I do think segmented tails, I find that it gets a little bit better reaction out of fish. So I've used the voodoos. DOAs are great. But they're not front weighted. Most of them have internal weights that are more towards the back of the shrimp. I've caught a couple redfish on them. I much prefer when I use the front weighted shrimp like the Power Prawn or the voodoos, because most times when I'm using shrimp presentations on the bottom, it's in a deep hole, and I don't need something that's, basically the middle weights that don't get down fast enough. So Power Prawns are a go-to for me. I've been fishing them around rock piles, heavy structure, oysters here in Texas, and they produce fish. When I know that those fish are locked down in those types of spots, paddletails are hard to present in those areas because they either zip by really fast, or it just doesn't look super natural when you bounce a paddletail on the bottom up and down. It can work, but shrimp is just the way to go in those scenarios. And I've caught a lot of big fish, as you insiders have seen in the reports here in Corpus, pulling some big reds off of rock piles with those Power Prawns. But Power Prawn and voodoo shrimp are probably my top two.
Yep. I'll leave you guys with a statement here. Friends don't let friends buy pre-rigged shrimp. Just remember that. Friends don't let friends buy pre-rigged shrimp. And it's because what we talked about on a prior podcast, right? When you get a shrimp that's pre-rigged, that's all you got. Like, you can't change the weight. That means you're fishing one depth that's only good for really one depth. And like the Power Prawn, right, Luke? I mean, you guys showed it right when I started talking about it. Luke, you showed it on a big old jig head that you can get down 10 feet. You check 20 feet with that thing. And then Richard, you showed a weedless version. It's so versatile that's why we say it's the most versatile shrimp lure out there. And it just seems to attract strikes from really, really big fish. I mean, we've caught some of our biggest snook in our lives off of that Power Prawn, monster redfish. It is a phenomenal lure. Which one do you guys seem to go to more? Is it the junior or the original, the big boy?
Definitely the junior for me up here. It's so versatile. I mean, I can use this, and especially like this time of year, and just slowly drag this across a mud flat, and it is absolutely killer. I mean, you don't even have to reel. You can just drag your rod, just super slow. And I know this isn't a trout podcast, but man, this absolutely kills the trout, especially when they're suspended mid-column, and you can throw it just like this, where it's just enough weight to get down, and it looks like it's a natural, just super slow presentation, and they absolutely hammer it. Just there's so much you can do with this lure. It's awesome.
Yeah, my preference is for dock fishing. That's my number one go-to, is this big jig head. This is a 1/2 ouncer, so it's thumping against the bottom, and it just draws attention. It has that little mud plume when it hits, and not only have we been catching more fish, most importantly, they've been bigger fish. So my average fish size has increased. I usually go with the bigger one just to get more attention of those bigger fish in particular. Although the wintertime, I have been using the junior a lot more. For triple tail, that little junior one is my second best lure behind the Alabama Leprechaun. They absolutely love it. And like Joe said too, is the ability to rig it to the depth that you're using, the depth that you're fishing is so important. And I also highly recommend going away from those shrimp lures that have all those weird extremities where they try to make it look so realistic to the human that it defeats the purpose and the actual performance side. Because you want that lure to have a really good, fast darting motion. When they get spooked, they dart really fast and they glide down nice and slowly. And you can't cast as far. It's a lot of wind resistance. So when you have, spooky redfish up in the shallows, having all those little extremities out there really, really does more harm than good. It looks cool, but on the performance side, we did a lot of testing of shrimp lures when before we went out with this, just to make sure that I was legit. And that was one big thing I saw, or one feature that I noticed, is that when I was using this, matching the weights, right, the same weight, just to make it fair, the casting distance was better, and my fish catching results were better as well.
Cool. Wyatt?
Yeah, I tend to change up the size based on the area I'm fishing. So like I just mentioned, fishing rock piles and oysters. If I'm fishing oysters that are on the inside of a grass flat, or that are, on the edge of a mud flat, things like that, where I know there's, your average slot size redfish, or lower slot, I'm going to use that junior because it's just easier for them to eat. I don't ever want one of those smaller fish to look at it and be like, I can't fit that in my mouth. Which I've caught some pretty small redfish on the full size, but I'll normally use the junior inshore, and on the inside of flats. Now, when I start hitting those bars up, those big reefs that they've got up in Galveston that border the edge of intercoastal channels, there's big upper slot and over slot and even bull size redfish. That's when I'm throwing my full size prawn. Tournament days, I'm throwing the full size prawn. When I go to the jetty and I'm trying to hook some of the big bull redfish there, I'm throwing the full size prawn. It just depends on where I'm fishing. And if I know that there's the possibility of bigger fish there, usually I'm going to throw that larger shrimp. But inshore, most times I'm trying to attract all the bites I can. So I'll go with the smaller, the junior for sure.
Cool. It's good stuff. All right, let's move on to Topwater. Can't have a podcast about top lures catching redfish in 2022 if we don't talk about Topwater lures. And we have the Moonwalker. Luke, I knew someone would have it handy.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically a walk the dog lure, and it has, at least in my opinion, the top pros of them all combined into one. And I'll just start with the one really unique factor is that it actually comes with inline hooks. A lot of us are doing catch and release fishing for redfish. Also, redfish have very rubbery mouths, and they're pretty good about, when they do commit to topwater, they don't play around. Like it's not like they're not designed to hit topwater. So when they do, they come up and really get after it. And so you don't need treble hooks. You catch less, you snag less weeds, like that floating weeds, especially in the summertime when the topwater bites best. There's often a lot of weeds floating on the water. So the inlines, you catch less weeds. You have just the same hookup ratio, if not better, especially for the bigger fish. The good thing is you do lose, like the lady fish and stuff have a harder time getting the fish that come, the small fish that kind of come up and just tap it. So you'll catch less junk fish, more good fish. And it's just easy to use, has a really nice walk the dog motion, cool color pattern. It's basically the slam shady color pattern. If you look closely, you can see white with the silver gold flakes in there. Big eye, the little slash on the tail looks like an injured, like looks like a trout just took a chunk out of it. It's been a really good lure. It's a new one, so it's a new one out there. But in the testing so far from us, as well as the beta testers, we offered it probably like, is that 4 months ago, probably to Insider Club members to do a beta test of the first round, and the feedback was amazing. So far, this is my go-to topwater for really all season. Mostly it's spring through fall, a little bit of winter time, but it has been awesome. And
it's got the beefiest hooks that we could find in the world, like literally. And those hooks, if you were to go buy those, just two of them, $9 to $11, depending on where you're looking, just for the hooks alone. So like we went all out and got the best of the best.
Yeah, they're premium. You can see even on the ring, right? It's soldered all the way around. So it's super frustrating when that braid line can get into anything. Sometimes it gets into that little gap of a hook and it's a nightmare and it weakens your line. These hooks are fully soldered. I mean, this is the highest end hook out there. And so we wanted this lure to be the best topwater. And that was, we went big on everything.
Yep. Yeah. I love that thing. So for those of you wondering, we are sold out the last two rounds. We sell it pretty quickly. We had an issue with the one round that some of them weren't rattling enough. So we just said, all right, whoever bought one, we're going to send you a new one. We'll probably have it in mid to late March, which will be right in time because, right, even though you can catch fish on topwater all year long, it's not ideal when it's cold. The fish are a little bit more lethargic and towards the bottom. So it should be right in time for spring. So stay tuned. Anyone who bought one, you members, we will be sending you out a free one on this last round. So just know that will be happening probably mid-Marchish. So stay tuned. And of course, members 30% off, I believe it was 30 or 40% off is what we did on those Moonwalkers. So one more reason to be an insider member if you're not already. What else in the Topwater? I know Wyatt, Richard, anything else you guys like to throw?
Yeah, so one of the cool things, I might actually stand up here and grab it in a sec, but there's a lure that influenced a feature on the Moonwalker, and it's the Yozuri Inshore pencil. And it's it almost looks like a pilchard, but it sits in the water kind of diagonally. The downside of this is, and me and Luke talked a lot, redfish do key in on the walk a ton. A constant walk of a topwater is tough to beat for a red. But like we mentioned, they're not really designed to jump up and hammer a topwater. And the Moonwalker, something we spoke on, was that Yozuri pencil does a really good job of getting hookups with reds. Now, granted, I don't find that it attracts as many blowups as a normal spook or a Moonwalker because it doesn't have that normal walk to it. But when a fish does come to hit that Yozuri pencil, it will hook up almost every time because basically the tail end of that topwater sits lower in the water. So when that redfish jumps up to go grab it, because their mouth hinges downward, they have an easier time hooking up with that topwater. So I think the reason we had an issue with the rattles on that last round that you mentioned, Joe, was we tried to add a little bit more weight towards the end of that Moonwalker so that it would sit lower in the water and have a little bit better of a hookup ratio on reds. And the original round that we did that had pretty good weight in it, I didn't have many issues with having hookups from reds. But really the biggest thing I look for with topwater on redfish is that it's got a good walk, good constant walk. I don't care so much about the rattle with it, whether it's high frequency, low frequency. That's more of a trout concern for me. Just whether it's got a good walk and how low it sits in the water. That's my biggest thing for those topwaters. Let me see if I can go grab that pencil real.
Oh, well, look at he's man.
Yeah, getting it.
Just disappeared.
But
Yeah, he's disappeared.
But going off what I was saying, I mean, I used to, before, we had this and these heavy hooks, I would actually replace the back hook with like a 3X heavy hook to get a little bit more of a sag in the back when I'm fishing for redfish, and it absolutely works. So these are awesome.
That's how you wear your pants too, right? A little sag in the back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course. All right, Wyatt is back.
Yep. So I've got that Yozuri pencil here. I was talking about how it sits low. It sits a lot like that. But again, the design of this lure isn't really meant to walk really well. It kind of just does head turns. So we took the best of both worlds, and we had that Moonwalker sit at just a slight enough angle. But this was another topwater that I was a big fan of for redfish, was this Yozuri pencil. But it influenced a lot of that new Moonwalker design.
And I'll add one more in there, the surprise one, the old Horny Toad, the bullfrog. This is my favorite topwater, only for the time, like in the summer when there's a lot of floating weeds, and just any topwater with exposed hooks, which is pretty much all other ones. It's just too much of a hassle. In one tournament, I placed a redfish, so a top 3 redfish and a top 3 trout in a legit tournament with 40 boats, live bait and artificial included. And this little bullfrog got the job done. Caught one of my biggest trout ever on this. Tons of nice redfish. It is, and it's just fun, right? It's fun to use a lure that when people look at you, look like you're an idiot until you pull out a giant fish right in their face. So the bullfrog, I have a tip on how to use it and rig it and everything, but just do zoom Horny Toad bullfrog for redfish and you'll see that tip. But it's one that's always in my tackle bag just because it's fun, and it skips incredibly well. So you can skip way up under mangroves and not get snagged. That's when I started using it and realized how good it was. I started using open flats too. But it doesn't cast as far as like the plugs that we've been talking about. So I don't like it in open water scenarios when there's not weeds, but this is something that I always have in my tackle bag. I've even jumped tarpon with it. I still haven't landed one with it. I've jumped multiple tarpon on it.
Oh, Horny Toad. That's pretty funny. Cool. All right. So we got paddletail, jerk shad, topwater, shrimp. We'd be remiss if we didn't talk about something that's worked for decades, maybe even centuries. The old cold spoon. I mean, literally works everywhere. Our dad, he's now a massive fan of the Power Prawn and Slam Shady. I saw Dad put an order in 100-pack of Slam Shady, but that dude, he will never go fishing, especially for redfish, without a bunch of gold spoons on him. He loves those. Remember he'll call us and we're heading down to Port Charlotte, proceeded. Hey, can you guys stop by Walmart and pick me up some gold spoons? Like, Dad, we got them at fishstrong.com. He's like, get them wherever you can. Give me some of them Johnson gold spoons. So which one do you have there, Luke?
Yeah, this is a silver minnow, and this is just, I mean, it's a standard in spoons. I think most tackle stores have them, as Joe mentioned, Walmart does, and most, really everybody has them, just because they flat out work. And it's something that if somebody didn't tell you that it was good and you saw it in a store next to like their super lifelike lures, you'd think somebody's an idiot for buying one. But I don't know, I really don't know what it is about them, how they're so effective. They flat out work. And I still like Paddletails better. I mentioned before, I use Paddletails in the shallows, except for when those stupid puffer fish are biting all my lures in half. That's when I switch over to the gold spoon. It can only be done in the shallow water, which is a con, unlike Paddletails that can use anywhere. But the puffer fish can't ruin them, and they're easy to use, cast, retrieve. They're weedless, and they just flat out just get strikes too. I don't know. Literally know what it is about. There's a lot of other ones out there. Aqua Dream makes some good ones. I did a comparison where I did 3 casts for a few different trips. And on the gold spoon, on this one versus the Aqua Dream, they both caught fish. This seemed to do better for redfish, and the Aqua Dream seemed to do better for snook. But on all days, they all caught some fish. So all of them that I've tried so far have worked. This is just so easy to find, and it's pretty cheap too. You can get it for good prices.
Yep.
Yeah, spoon is a staple in my tackle box. I think the days that I find myself throwing a spoon exclusively for reds is when it's a day that there's super heavy wind, 15, 20 miles an hour. It's stirring up stuff on the flats. It's hard to cast your paddle tails with the, the light 1/8 ounce, even an 1/8 ounce spoon, throwing it straight into the wind versus an 1/8 ounce paddle tail. It's crazy how much more distance you get. And obviously more distance you cover on a cast, more water you're covering, more fish you can catch. So I throw those spoons on real windy, nasty days where the water's stirred up. I think the reason that reds seem to like it, it is one of my go-to lures in the spring, is it looks a lot like a small shad that's darting around through the water, or a little pinfish that's poking in and out of the grass. If you've ever been, trolling through the flats and looking down on a clear day, you'll see those pinfish, they'll pop up and then they'll go back down into the grass. And I think when you retrieve a spoon, there's obviously, you can just constantly roll it, catch fish. My favorite way, and I actually learned it from Joe and Luke's dad watching a retrieve that they evaluated on an insider report, was that drag, pop, and stop. Drag, pop. So you're getting the pop that takes it up out of the grass and then it settles back down. That pop and settle back down is like, I think it simulates that shad that's coming out of the grass or coming out of the mud, or the pinfish. That's when I always get my redfish to hop on it. So as soon as I do that pop and I'm waiting, pulling that slack out, a lot of times I find a redfish on the end of my line when I'm rolling those spoons. Great lure for kind of those nasty days that a lot of people don't want to fish, but spoons, have saved me on those days for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love letting it just flutter down, and they just almost always grab it on that drop. And one thing too with spoons, they are a chunk of metal, so one thing that's really important a lot of times when those fish grab it, they're not going to hang on to it near as long, I've noticed, as like a soft plastic. So especially like with the one that you just saw, like the silver minnow, you get a chance, get a hook sharpener, because having those super sharp, sticky hooks will really, really increase your hookup ratio, because those fish just aren't going to hang on to it very long. So that's something that has really helped me out a lot.
And fish actually prefer the sharper hook.
Yeah,
I'm serious, right? I mean, just like if you're getting your ear pierced, you want as sharp as needle possible. You want that thing in and out. You don't want some dull thing going in your ear. Jeez,
also nicer. Yeah,
painful. Helping out everyone in this case. Cool. What else? Like that's kind of like the top 5, right? Like I think what sets us apart from a lot of other, fishing TV shows and magazines, they could go through 5,000 different iterations that, as we kicked off this podcast, it probably can work, but it's all about simplicity, right? And being a specialist. If you go fish with Luke and myself and or Wider Richard, I just know because Luke and I fish together every week, we're using the same stuff over and over again because it just keeps on working and we become specialists at it. One of the biggest things that changed my entire game was just copying Luke. And Luke started going out and fishing tournaments and beating guides with just 1 or 2 lures. He's like, I'm going to become an absolute expert at this, a specialist at basically a paddletail and a jerk shad, and take nothing else. And literally that's all I'm going to use. And I am just going to make it work. And what do you know? He started catching more fish. And I know that's like probably the biggest curse for many new anglers, right? You see all this exciting stuff. You could spend a lot of time, if you're watching this on YouTube, listening to podcasts, and or going to a Bass Pro Shops or going to fishstrong.com and see all these shiny objects and you could spend all day buying stuff and testing stuff out, which is what we've done over the many years. And we just want to simplify it because, you know, Luke, you and I did it for a long time, right? Remember that massive tackle box I had? It was like 3 stories high, and it had every lure possible. And as soon as I'd make 4 or 5 casts of one, I'd switch off and change another one. And we were so inconsistent. And now it's about finding the 90-10 zone, right? It's not about the lure so much. The lure is important, but we focus more time on finding that zone and then just sticking with one presentation over and over and over again. And then that means, you know, same lure, trying different ways to retrieve it, right? You mentioned it, White. You could just do a straight roll with a spoon, or that little flutter sometimes is what might get every single strike, like it happened in my dad's video there that we posted to our members. So that's really the big lesson here is you don't need a bunch. There's a lot of tackle stores that would love for you to go spend $10,000 and buy every lure they have. Keep it simple. Buy a lot of the stuff that works and become a specialist. Simplicity, specialist. Simplicity, specialist. That was the theme last year. It's probably going to keep happening this year. I wish we had Justin on here to do his little theme song for it, but man, it's so true. I mean, don't you guys agree?
Absolutely. I mean, like I was just thinking of, you know, we talked about the top 5 and I wanted to kind of give percentages. I had to pull up my calculator. I'm not great at math, but like on what of those lures I throw the percentage of the times, really simplicity specialist in mind, I throw that paddletail, you know, 75 to 85% of the time. The other lures we talked about, I use in niche scenarios, you know, the clear, calm days, or the, you know, maybe that topwater bite first thing in the morning. But like, if you want to talk about simplicity specialist, paddletails, like just make it simple on yourself, because like you said, Joe, it comes down to finding where the feeding fish are, because all those lures will work. There's just some that are better for covering, you know, different columns of water in those different 10% zones, but finding the fish first, that's the number one thing. And then keeping it simple is going to help you catch a lot more fish for sure.
Yeah, exactly what you said, Wyatt. I mean, especially, you know, if you're like us and many of the anglers probably listening to this, I mean, we love going and finding new areas, right? I mean, it kind of gets boring going back to the same area every single time. So, I mean, almost probably definitely over 90% of the times we probably go out, it's always at least one brand new spot. So having that confidence of just knowing what works and using it until it does work. I mean, that's what you need to do. I mean, it's going to keep your confidence. And it's also, I mean, you just get good at it. You just catch so many fish. Eventually you're just like, this is going to work if I continue to cast, you know, and you're in those new areas. You want something that, you know, you are eliminating and not switching around a bunch of different lures. You know, sometimes it just takes a lot of casting until you figure it out. So
there's a reason there's such thing called a confidence lure, right? Or confidence bait. I mean, it's in every pro bass fisherman has it. Even the offshore guys have it, right? We had some of the offshore guys on the podcast and they're like, man, if I'm in a tournament and I'm going after a marlin, I'm using this. This is it. Or a mahi or whatever it might be. They all had that confidence, you know, that lure, the big plug that they just knew if they only had one shot, this is what I'm going to use. So yeah. I would highly encourage you to do that this year if you haven't already.
I mean, just one example. This is to the extreme, but this is just how much I believe in it. Like when we were tournament fishing, one of the early tournaments in the series, we were coming up on a school of redfish, and I can't remember if it was me or my buddy Nick. We bumped the tackle box. I had one of those Plano hard tackle boxes. And with the whole school of redfish just totally bailed. And we were like, man, we hardly ever use anything. Let's just not take a tackle box anymore. So we just got a Publix bag, put a bunch of extra tails. All we used were literally, this is all we used in the shallow water. We had extra owner hooks, extra jerk shads, and then we had some extra leader in case we needed to re-rig the leader, and then some extra jig heads for the deeper water for fishing like deeper docks. And it was shallow water, deep water, 2 lures, and then just extras of everything and no tackle back. Like that's when money's on the line and going against people using live bait. And we actually won money. We profited both years. It wasn't enough to quit our jobs, but we were competing successfully with only using lures, without bringing a tackle box at all. just a couple of things that we like, the confidence lures, and then forget about everything else and just focus on finding the fish. Like if everybody did that, they'd be catching more fish. And
Yep.
You go to like a tackle store, right? Go to one of these big tackle stores, there's 8 rows of lures. There's like one whole row of just jig heads, right? I mean, like how quickly can you get confused? And it just takes the mind away from the important thing, which is finding the fish. So I can't stress enough, if only you learn one thing out of this, it's the importance of just focusing on finding the fish. And then just if you do that, you can have a terrible lure and still catch a lot of fish.
Yeah. Well, Luke, what if someone needed help in finding the fish? Where would they go?
We happen to have the exact solution. That's why our club's been growing, is because we put the focus on finding the fish, on what's actually important. That's the Insider Fishing Club. That is literally the whole premise, is just helping you find the fish on every trip, regardless of what the weather's doing. I used to think wintertime was terrible, so we never even fished. Now it's like my favorite time to go out there. You can do some amazing sight fishing, and the fish are actually really easy to predict. It's probably the easiest time to predict where the fish are in the winter. And so we just teach how to do that, right? Throughout all the year, every week, you get in 10 minutes or less, you can know exactly where the most fish are going to be, and then what lures to use to catch them.
So that's what we do. So every day, Richard touched on it. Our fishing coaches, from Wyatt in Texas to us all over Florida, and adding some new coaches on as Pat's starting to travel all over the place. We go out and fish a new spot every single day, like literally Monday through Friday, and then post it pretty much real time, and not necessarily live, but with in a very short amount of time. So you're getting to see exactly what's happening, that trend right then and there. And we're posting everything, the pre-trip analysis, which is not always where you catch fish, right? That's real life. That's what people love about it. We're showing, where we launched the boat or kayak, or wading in some cases. We show where all the fish were caught, where the fish were missed, like lessons learned, and then kind of a post-trip analysis. So we're doing this every single day. I mean, 5 days a week. And then on Friday, Luke mentioned the 10 minutes or less. He goes and basically summarizes everything the fishing coaches were seeing on the water. Like, that's like having 5 full-time guides all getting together and saying, guys, here's what the trends are. Here's how to recreate it in your area, regardless of where you are. And then Luke curates that in combination with everything happening in our community. We have 27,000 members. They're all posting their reports along with their tactics. And so Luke gets in there and curates all of it. So 10 minutes or less, you can get it. But some of the best advice I can also say in terms of helping you find the fish is watch all of those reports. Meaning, even though Wyatt's in Texas, and if you live in South Carolina or Florida, wherever it might be, watch that. You will learn from that. And that's been the coolest thing, right? Because when we first started the club, it was a Florida-based club. And then we started getting people in Texas. And honestly, we were a little bit worried, right? Because we're like, we haven't proven this works in Texas yet. And then we started getting these testimonials from the Texans. They're like, man, this is amazing. And they started referring all their friends. And now Texas is our number 2 place by far. And then it's the Carolinas and Georgia after that. And it's the same thing there. I mean, those areas, they're not that different. Redfish, trout, snook in a couple states, and then flounder, they all behave similar. They all have the same wants and needs in life, right? They all have the same biology at the end of the day. They're a whole lot easier to predict once you know the trends and once you can see someone fishing for them. That's the most valuable thing, right? Is seeing someone on the water actually fishing and how they position. I mean, that's the stuff that's not being taught out there, right? And then the mistakes, we all make them. That's some of my favorite thing, is to watch some of the mistakes made, that where a fish was missed, and then on the post trip, Wyatt or Tony, whoever will say, oh man, here's what I would have done differently. I mean, that is priceless information. So that was a massive change we did on the Insider Club here this year. Is we used to do 1 or 2, now we're doing at least 5 of these insider reports every single week. And then we have, of course, the tackle discounts, and even access to tackle, like we've talked about here, that you don't get if you're not a member, the community, and different reviews and tips that are only for the insider members. It's the stuff that you won't see over there on the YouTube. So just one more reason to join the club. It's risk-free. I mean, literally, if you don't feel like you're finding the fish and saving money on tackle and meeting new friends, like, having fun and meeting people in the community, then you don't pay. It's that simple for an entire year. I mean, guys, don't you wish every company treated you that way? Like every company you did business way, that, had a 365-day, 100% money back guarantee, no questions asked. I mean, it's a flat out no brainer. So I hope you will join us. Another way to save money on your tackle. If you're going to be buying all these things that we talked about here today, guess what? Guess where you can find them? Can you guys guess? Fishstrong.com. That's our tackle store, and 20 to 30% off if you're a member. So right away, you could pay for your membership in a very, very short amount of time. And that goes for the rods and reels and everything else on there. So just one more reason to join us in the club. And then I think in one of the next episodes, it's on the calendar, we're going to kind of go behind the scenes and show a couple on the water reports. We're not going to show you everything, but just kind of tease and show why that's so valuable to be able to see someone fish an area and how powerful the pre-trip and the post-trip analysis is. So you'll get a little, if you haven't joined us yet and you're still on the fence for whatever reason, we'll go ahead and show you a little bit more. But for those of you that you just say, you know what, I have nothing to lose, it's risk-free, come join us. You can either do monthly or annual. Annual, you save 60%. That's what most people do. And once again, if it's not a fit, anytime the first year, we give you your money back. So you get nothing to lose and everything to gain. Guys, I know I just went on a tirade about how awesome the club is, but I'm that passionate about it. It's what we live and breathe for. It's where we spend our time in the community. Anything else here on this top lures?
I want to say we hammered it all.
Yep.
You guys do
Simplicity
great.
specialist.
Can you sing the song, Richard? Simplicity.
More of Josh Turner.
Josh Turner. Cool. All right, guys, that was awesome. If you have any questions, let us know. We have a little area there at saltstrong.com in the fishing tips section. You'll see this post. It's the best place because all those comments come to us, whereas in YouTube, they don't. We still try to get there and check them. But the best place, if you want it to come right to our inbox, is saltstrong.com. In the fishing tips section, you'll see this podcast episode. You can ask a question at the bottom and we'll try to get back to you. And of course, if you're an insider member, man, post your questions in the community. The thing is picking up steam, made some really cool changes to it, gave it a new facelift. It's super fast now and easy to use on your phone, and mobile friendly. Progressive app is what the new kids are calling it. And hope to see you in there in the community. So guys, appreciate you all. Talk to you in the next episode. Peace. We out.